Roland Deschain confronts his eternal struggle against the man in black who seeks to bring down the Dark Tower in the latest adaptation of a Stephen King novel. If you've never listened to an episode of Remake This Movie Right, please do not judge us based on this episode because this one is very special and we're doing things very different. We gathered several die-hard Dark Tower fans to come together and decide how do we proceed with the Dark Tower universe, or do we just start over? That's right, we're about to remake Stephen King's The Dark Tower right. Hello, my fellow cinematic architects, and welcome to Remake This Movie Right. We are a member of the Hollywood Outsider Network. Listen to episodes of Remake This Movie Right on Apple Podcasts. Reviews are appreciated. Your podcast app of choice, or just visit the website at remakethismovie.right.com. Remake This Movie Right is a show that takes an original film that has an actual remake in the works. Not this time. Figure out what still clicks and what doesn't. There's a little bit of humor at it, and then we determine exactly how Hollywood should remake it. So by the end of each episode, we will have the remake ready to roll for Hollywood execs and present it to you in movie trailer form. We are here to tell Hollywood how to remake this movie right. I am your host, Aaron Peterson, and joining me today, you know him from MediaVoiceovers.com. He's been on Stephen King's It, and he's the very voice of Remake This Movie Right. You've actually heard him on every single episode. Wayne Henderson.
Greetings and salutations. Thanks for having me on, and in a world other than these.
Save that for later. All right. You remember him from the Dreamcatcher Con Air, where I don't know what he did in that episode, but you remember that. And he's the host of the Blacklist Exposed, Troy Heinrichs.
We are well met along the path of the beam. Glad to be here talking more Stephen King.
That's true. And you remember him from Transformers. He'll be on an upcoming episode called Hellboy. And he's the founder of the Hollywood Outsider, Mr. Rob Rowald.
Thank you, Cy.
Is that a Dark Tower reference too, Cy?
It is.
I got to read something, don't I?
It's high speech. Come on now, Aaron.
Well, this episode is a little different because we're going to talk about a movie that just came out, which isn't fair to say, let's already remake it. And nobody's trying to poo-poo it. Well, one of us might, actually, but three of us at least enjoyed it. But the reason that we're talking about is it's come up a lot because we've done so many Stephen King episodes, and Dark Tower is his magnum opus. It seems to be the one thing that people know him from the most. They know him from obviously, Stephen King. He's very famous. But when I ask anyone who's a big fan of his, Dark Tower always comes up. And there has been a lot of dissension in the ranks over this movie. There are people that really like it. There are people that love it. And there are people that hate it. Critics, I don't care about what the critics say. I'm talking what fans say. This is what I've seen from fans. So what we're going to do for this episode is we're going to talk about the movie that just came out, what we liked, what we didn't like, and then we're going to talk about how we would rather have this movie done, or maybe we'll keep some of the things from the movie that we thought were great. Maybe we'll get rid of some other stuff and go a different way. We're going to have a little bit more open forum on this episode, a little bit more, hopefully, fun, and it's just not meant to be the way we do a normal episode. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I think it's going to be a lot. You guys ready to have some fun?
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I suppose.
Well, who can tell me this? You know what? These three, I should explain. I am a casual viewer. I'm a novice. I read 100 pages, roughly, of Rob's book, actually, The Gunslinger, and it just didn't click for me. It didn't inspire me at all. Maybe it's because I wanted it to be something it wasn't. I thought it was more of a Western, I guess.
And you read the original version, not the updated version.
No. I gave him the updated version.
Oh, you gave him the updated version. Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust him with my first edition of the original version. So I know how he treats books.
That's right. I do, man. I get that spine, I bend it. Oh, yeah. Or I fold the pages. I'll do that little where you fold the corner. I love it.
Oh, dog ears.
You're killing me.
Yeah.
Oh, stop.
That's how I read it. And I won't.
This is why I listen.
I won't do a Kindle. I can't do a Kindle. But the other three guys, they are adamant fans of the franchise. So they're going to do most of the talking once I get my speech and rambling out of the way. They're going to do most of the talking for this episode. I'm just going to chime in once in a while with casual viewing and to keep this thing on the rails, because if you ever listened, you know Troy in particular needs to be kept in a direction. Otherwise, he's just like one of those fidget spinners.
But Ka is like a wheel.
Oh, yes. And
as long as the beam, as long as those rails are monorails.
That's right, Blaine.
This is all kinds of stuff that I'm not going to understand. All right. So the last gunslinger, Roland Deschain, has been locked in an eternal battle with Walter O'Dim, also known as the Man in Black, determined to prevent him from toppling the Dark Tower, which holds the universe together. With the fate of the world at stake, good and evil will collide in the ultimate battle, as only Roland can defend the tower from the Man in Black. And who's he after?
Jake Chambers.
Jake Chambers. There you go. Now, we just saw it, so the memory should be fresh in your mind. I want to go around and we'll split it up a little bit because I know one person didn't like it, and I'm a casual viewer. So we'll start with who thinks they're the biggest Dark Tower fan.
I would say Wayne is because he saw it twice.
Are we talking the movie or the books?
In general, Dark Tower fan. But Wayne, you know what? You do these trailers every week. You go first, sir. What are your initial thoughts and your memory, your experience of seeing the Dark Tower?
All right. And I did see the movie twice in Dolby Atmos, which was incredible. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, this is not the greatest movie ever made, but it was far superior to what I was expecting. And the fact that for whatever reason, the critics selected this as the movie to trash beyond all recognition and try to ruin its chances at the box office still has me ticked off. But with that aside, I enjoyed the movie. Granted, it doesn't have all the mythology that we wanted because it is only a 95-minute movie. And I think it lays the groundwork really well for the possible television series, which is going to be a backstory if it does well enough, and then possible sequels. Idris Elba, fantastic. Matthew McConaughey, I think he did a very good job with the Man in Black character. In fact, the child actor that played Jake Chambers, I thought he did a really good job as well. And considering the budget they had, I think they made a pretty strong film. My son doesn't know anything about the Dark Tower. He enjoyed it. My wife doesn't know anything about the Dark Tower. She enjoyed it, and we're all hoping for more.
All right, Rob.
Yes. Yeah, my overall thought of the movie is it was very mediocre. I tried to set my expectations low going in because I am such a big fan of the books, and I knew that this was going to be a continuation and not an adaptation. But I thought that the 95-minute runtime was far too short to try and bring everything that I thought they needed to bring to this movie. I agree. Is it Idris or Ildris, however you pronounce his name, that did a great job with the material he was given. I was not overly impressed with McConaughey as Walter O'Dim. I don't know if that, I mean, he's a great actor. I think the material just wasn't quite where I thought it should have been for his character. Although I did think that the kid who played Jake Chambers did a great job.
That would be Tom Taylor.
Tom
Taylor. All right. Troy, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I saw this movie with two completely uninitiated people, four uninitiated people, and one super duper fan. And I can say that two of the uninitiateds really, really liked the movie. Two of the uninitiateds were kind of the same place of, it was good, but I just wanted more resolution, explanation, understanding. So yeah, the short runtime definitely was a little bit troublesome for some of the people that did see this movie. Overall, though, the 95 minutes I thought was great because it kept it tight, kept it action-packed. There wasn't any fluff. It did an exposition on forever. And sometimes that's just okay. And I think that really helped the movie get, I think it had a cinema score of B at this point, and it's got a 4-star rating in iTunes for the pre-order, even though it's got the 18% Rotten Tomatoes score. So, I mean, there's mixed emotions about the film. I think that Idris killed it as Roland, personally, even racial stuff aside. I think he channeled the gunslinger's aura, presence, whatever you want to call it, mysticness, quite well.
His
Ka, sure. Matthew McConaughey was just all right. He kind of went a little bit over the top in a few places where it was, oh, hey, it's Matthew McConaughey. It's not Walter O'Dim, kind of thing. It kind of takes you out of the character. And then Tom Taylor, I think for what he was given and what he had to work with from Jake Chambers' repertoire from the books, I think he did fine. He wasn't stellar, wasn't fantastic, but he did okay with what he had to work with. So overall, yeah, it's a solid B movie. It's good.
Okay, so I'm the novice. I think the movie is actually really enjoyable. I didn't know hardly anything about the Dark Tower. I just know, hey, there's a big old tower and it's got to stay up. Otherwise, universes are going to go bad. I didn't know much about it. And I got really excited because I love Elba. I'm a I've been a big fan of his for years. Luther, I think, is a great show. The guy does nothing but good work, in my opinion. And he doesn't have to do a lot. He's one of those actors that just doesn't have to do a lot, which this seems like a perfect role for him in that respect. McConaughey, I do agree to a degree with Rob. I think he was teetering a few times. I don't think he crossed the line for me, but man, he was right there. He was right on that line. So apparently he just crossed the line for Rob. Didn't so much for me. I can handle a little bit more mustache twirling than I think Rob can. So, but I really enjoyed it. I really did. And I think the short runtime really did help. I see so many movies throughout the summer. It was nice to see a blockbuster that wasn't 2.5 hours long. It really was. I feel like the response that I've seen, and I'm just somebody that's just standing back playing devil's advocate, is that I feel like people did have an expectation, which I totally get. I'm a big source material guy too. I mean, I'm still mad about Uncle Ben not being in Spider-Man. So I get it. I absolutely get it. But for somebody that wasn't part of that, it didn't bother me at all because I didn't have any of that baggage walking into it. I just could enjoy the movie, and I really did. I had a really good time.
I agree. I don't think it needed to be a 2.5 hour big epic thing for the intro movie, but giving it, if it would have had like another 20 to 30 minutes where they could have filled in more backstory or had a little bit more about Midworld as opposed to the very little that we actually get to see, I think it could have made the movie much better.
That's fair. I do think that's fair. I think it could have used. I definitely saw a few spots where I'm like, well, we could fluff that out a little bit. And the ending, I definitely think was rushed. So, I mean, it's almost like, okay, whoa, well, they're already jetting off they're hopping in the phone booth. What are they doing? All right. It's not a phone booth. I was trying to give you Doctor Who people something to play with. All right, well, please subscribe.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
It's a police box, Aaron, not a phone booth.
Is it?
Yes.
Man, I've been wrong for years. No wonder nobody ever laughs at those jokes. Now I get it.
You just call it a TARDIS and you'll be fine.
There you go. Call it the TARDIS.
It's bigger on the inside, much like the Dark Tower, apparently.
All right, please subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever podcast app you use. If you use your own pitch or thoughts, or you have your own pitch or thoughts on this week's show, email us to remakethismovieright@gmail.com.
For thousands of generations, the Gunslingers were knights, sworn to protect us from the coming of the dark.
We're just going to hop right into trivia. And this time, I'm not going to deliver the trivia. We're going to go around to these guys, and each of them are going to offer 3 pieces of trivia in regards to the Dark Tower. So, Troy, why don't you go first?
Sure. Some people may not know this, but the Dark Tower movie is actually inspired by the books called The Dark Tower. But those books are actually inspired by a poem called Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came, which is actually a really great poem if you read the whole thing. All the stanzas and if you get the beats of the poem really well, it's pretty intense. So I recommend people check out Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came. That's CHILDE for child.
Interesting. Okay. That's one.
Oh, I'm doing all 3. Okay.
Yeah, you do all 3.
So those of us that saw the Dark Tower, Nicholas Hamilton plays a very minor character, Lucas Hansen, in the Dark Tower movie. Well, Nicholas Hamilton will also be starring in Stephen King's It when it comes out in September. He'll be playing the character of Henry Bowers. So the movies are connected.
In a way. Yeah, I guess they are, in a way. Interesting. Okay, number 3?
Number 3, the Dark Tower itself is actually 182 meters or 600 feet tall for those of us in the States that can't convert to the metric system. And that stands in the eastern end of the land known as Endworld and is surrounded by a field of roses called the Kankan-no-Rei and is held together by 6 beams that stretch to the corners of the land and are guarded by 12 massive beasts on each end of the spokes of the beam.
Whoa. All right. Well, like a lot of craftsmanship went into that puppy, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I had to go a lot of stops at Home Depot. So
a
Wayne,
lot of stops.
Yeah. So Wayne, let's go to you. What are your 3 pieces of trivia for this movie?
Well, one, as everybody knows, and Rob, who's been waiting even longer than the rest of us for a Dark Tower movie to happen, and everybody said it couldn't happen, and I know there's some people that said that it shouldn't have happened, but along the way, our idols from Lost, Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof, they actually had their hands in it and were going to work with J.J. Abrams. Supposedly, they bought the rights to make the Dark Tower series into a motion picture for $19, which is a very important number in the Dark Tower universe. And for whatever reason, they just couldn't get it together. And I pine for maybe finding a copy of what sort of script they were working on, and maybe in a different level of the tower in an alternate universe, I can see that version.
That's interesting. I didn't know that they had put. I mean, a lot of people have had a script for this one, or worked on it, so that doesn't surprise me actually.
And by the end of tonight, we may have our own script for it. So
you never know. You never know. I think there already is one, and there's like 7 or 8 books of it. So just throw that. What's your next one?
The other one is what first got me kind of intrigued with what is this Dark Tower, because I knew that Stephen King was mostly a horror writer. But in that original movie, The Mist, the original version, not the abomination that's on television right now, at the very beginning, the main character is, he's a painter, okay? And one of the paintings that he's working on is basically one of the versions of the cover of one of the Dark Tower books. And I thought, well, why is this cowboy there? And he's surrounded by roses. That doesn't look like a Stephen King thing. I need to learn a little bit more about this whole Dark Tower thing. And so back then, when The Mist was made in 2007, was around the time that we thought maybe we'll get a Dark Tower movie and maybe they could tie it all together. But it didn't happen until just last month.
And that's because the Mist movie specifically did such a poor job at the box office. That's why it killed the project back in 2007.
Are you blaming The Mist for that?
It's not the Mist's fault.
It's true. It's true.
Who says that?
In the actual Mist movie, there's a poster of a fictional movie based on the Dark Tower, and it can be seen in the house of David Drayton, right?
Right.
And that is correct.
Yeah, and Drayton is doing a picture of Roland Deschain, who is played by Idris Elba in this particular version of the movie. So it should be a clue for an imminent movie, but because of the failure of The Mist, it delayed the project during those first few years.
That's your opinion, or it's a fact that you've actually verified somewhere?
It's trivia. It's on the internet. It's true.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's on the internet, it can't be wrong.
Exactly.
No, people check these things, you know.
All right, Wayne, anything else?
The other thing is kind of a roundabout thing, because anytime I get a chance to mention Damon Lindelof, Carlton Cuse, and Lost, and J.J. Abrams, I do. And we knew when we were originally watching Lost that they had mentioned that part of the show was inspired by Stephen King's The Dark Tower, as well as The Stand and many other novels. And then after going through all of the Dark Tower books, and you can even see nods to this in the movie, you can kind of see where I can see where Lost was inspired by this. Oh, that's where Lost got the idea of this. Oh, Lost stole that. But at the very, very beginning of the Dark Tower movie, when we see all the 1919 in the camp with all the kids, if that kind of reminds you of Dharmaville, I don't think it's an accident.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Or those 12 beasts that are guarding the 12 stations at the ends of the beam.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We don't need a whole Lost podcast, that's for sure. All right, so...
yes, we do.
No, we don't. Remake Lost right. Oh, that's cool. We can make a better ending. Rob, now we can go to... Yeah, I got that one in. Let's go to you, and you tell us your trivia.
All right, so the first piece of trivia that I have is it is going to be aimed more at people who've read the books. At the beginning of the film, they put up an ID card for the Tet Corporation. Tet Corporation is a big part of the book series. Starting, I believe it was in book 3 is where they start mentioning Tet. So if you haven't seen the movie yet or whatever, when they first bring it up, they bring up a title card that says Tet Corporation. And what's funny is nobody mentioned this for all their marketing, but you can actually go out on the internet and you can go to tetcorporation.com, and they've got a whole website and they've got a Twitter account and everything that they really underutilized for the movie. But it ties back in with the whole book series.
They created a whole Twitter account for that?
Yeah, there's a Twitter account. There's tet-corporation.com, which is a website, and it talks about all the different places where they have offices. And right now, the New York office has a big lit up ring around it because the movie's out. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
And they probably didn't use that particularly because of the fact that the Tet Corporation wasn't in the movie. So it was probably an idea they had, and they just went to the wayside because the Sombra Corporation and app was actually much more prevalent in the marketing.
Right.
And that was in the movie.
And that was in the movie, correct.
Now, was that the app that gave you a test regarding how well you have the shine?
As well as a few other things.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like to brag, but I got 10 out of 10 on the shine.
Oh. Damn you. I only got 9. I couldn't get the 10th one.
Yeah, humble brag.
I went to bed because I don't know what any of this is. All right, so Rob, what's your other one?
I'm going to tie back in with the J.J. Abrams and Lindelof thing. After they dropped the ball with the movie, it went into the hands of Ron Howard, Akiva Goldsmith, and they had a really ambitious proposal to do the entire book series over a trilogy of movies and 2 TV series, two seasons of television to fill in the backstory. But it got shot down because the executives thought there was no way that they could pull it off. It would cost far too much. However, for the movie, Ron Howard remains in name as a producer, and Goldsmith retained a writing credit. So I don't know if you guys were aware of that.
Akiva Goldsman.
Was it Goldsman?
Yep,
I thought it was Goldsmith. Yeah, sorry. Goldman. No, my bad.
Well, and Howard did have executive producer credits, I believe, in the opening credits of the movie.
Right. My third piece, after testing this movie out on audiences, Sony and MRC had to go back and spend $6 million on reshoots to fill in some of the backstory for the Gunslinger, because the first edit of the movie apparently didn't give enough information and people were confused.
That sounds about right. It happens all the time. I think people freak out a little too much over reshoots. A lot of times that's done, and usually it's something that's planned for. Star Wars has $150 million movie that they're reshooting millions of dollars worth of. So it happens. It's just something that happens. Now let's get into what this movie is and what it's not. Like what did you love about it? First, we're going to talk about the positives. What did you love about it? Rob, you had some issues with the mediocrity, it sounds like. So what did you love? Like you walked out of the movie and you're like, as a fan, they nailed that.
I loved all the nods to other Stephen King properties that are in this movie. So you've got the portal that leads back to Keystone Earth. The portal number is 1408, which is a nod back to both the movie and the novella 1408, which is about the haunted hotel room. Mm-hmm. You've got Pennywise, which is a carousel ride in the broken down theme park, and there's a statue with a hand with 3 balloons sticking up, which is obviously a reference to it. Mm-hmm. You've got Jake in his bedroom with his friend playing with a toy car that happens to be the same car that is Christine from there. You've got his therapist has a picture of the Overlook Hotel from The Shining on his credenza that gets you see it when the earthquake hits or the beamquake hits. That really, I loved that little attention to detail and all the nods back to the other stories that also tie into the Dark Tower series.
Do you feel like they, in your opinion, do you think they put more emphasis on nods to Stephen King than they did to the story Stephen King told?
Yeah, I think they put more emphasis on trying to have things that people would notice that would pull in the casual viewers, more people like you, less for people like me who are really big fans of the Dark Tower. So they were trying to appeal to a broader Stephen King audience, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. What about Troy? What did you love?
I am in the same boat as Rob, but I'll take it a step further. I loved all the extra Dark Tower references that were in the movie as well. Like if you're right behind the Pennywise scene in the theme park, there's actually a little tiny train back there, which has the face of Charlie the Choo-Choo Train, which is a book that actually foreshadows the horrors that will be coming upon Roland and the KA-tet when they board Blaine the monorail. And so I thought that was really cool. Then there was the scene when they're in the hospital and Roland talks about the talking animals, and we have raccoons up on the screen, which is a clear shout out to book readers about Oi the Billy Bumbler, who was not in the movie, sadly, but at least we got a shout out for Oi, which I thought was fantastic. So all those little things in the movie itself that shouted out things that we wanted to be in the movie but weren't there, at least those were kind of passing nods, like the opening title card sequence with the KA-tet, the Tech Corporation, and the turtle is their logo with the rose on the turtle, as well as the rose at the end of the movie on the door outside of King's Jewelers, which is funny because King actually inserts himself into the story in book 6. So those are kind of the fun things as well. The Easter eggs in this movie are fantastic. I mean, it was so much fun just going, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Shiny object. Shiny object.
That's exactly what it was.
And speaking of shiny objects, the fact that we actually got to see all 13 orbs of the Wizard's Rainbow, these were the orbs that they used to, that the Man in Black uses to taunt Roland with or look into the future. So the fact that he had all 13 of them, no book reader has ever seen all 13 orbs. So to see them all lined up nice and pretty on a display case, like a bunch of trophies, I thought that was really cool.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. Wayne?
We already talked about the rest of it. It's a good movie.
Okay, since Troy picked two of the things I was going to bring up, which is perfectly fine, I'm also going to go with one of the things that I loved about the movie is I think that it captured the feel of what we were going to try to get from a Dark Tower series, even though we only have part of the KA-tet so far. Roland, he looked and felt like the gunslinger. The gunplay, trying to visualize onto the screen what a master gunsmith he is. I think that came across very well. That was very giddy. And I don't know how much of it was CGI or sped up or how much he really practiced with classic old pistoles, but that just really worked.
Yeah, I love the gunplay. The gunplay was great. It was just, and honestly, I think I was talking to you about this, Troy. Every time I saw Idris do that, all I thought was, I believe he's that cool. He's doing that himself. Mm-hmm. Even though I know it's not physically possible, I'm looking at it going, you know what? Maybe he throws bullets in like that. Maybe he shoots like that. He's that cool. I think it could happen.
He can shoot around corners.
He can. He can. And he can bend bullet. He can do the wanted thing. He can just.
That's right.
Yep, there you go.
You should read 100 more pages and you'd be even more impressed.
That's right.
Yes.
Or I'd be deep into a nap. That's what I got out of it.
Ooh, oh no, you won't nap in the next 100 pages. That's for sure.
Yeah, because the next 100 pages is when the city of Tull comes into play, and whew, that's a great part of the story.
So he pays a toll? That doesn't sound very exciting.
He pays a
Jethro's though.
Everybody else pays a toll in Tull.
Everyone in Tull. Yeah, it's Tull, not Toll. Aaron, come on.
Oh, I got all excited. I'm like, wow, we're going to talk about taxes and paying fines. And all right, that's cool. Let's make something work.
They do pay the price, that's for sure.
Oh. I thought Idris was just perfectly cast. I don't know how it's written on the page. I really don't. I know the way I understand it, it was very much written like Clint Eastwood, spaghetti westernist esque role, and I feel like he nailed that. I mean, I know that his race was prominent in the book to a degree. I mean, pale skin, blue eyes. I don't know what relevance that had in the books, but it had no relevance in the movie, his race, so it didn't matter to me what color he was, and it worked great for me. I totally get there are some purists out there or some people that are big fans that had an issue with that change, and I get it. I'm somebody that I really believe in whatever the story says, put that on the screen. You know, don't deviate too much as long as it's not a core element of the character, or as long as it is a core element of the character. If it's not a core element, I don't care if you change it. And to me, what I saw wasn't a core element, so I thought he nailed it. And that's something I was really impressed with. And I like the concept. Like, I didn't know all of this stuff going in. I didn't understand what any of the mythology was. And I love that they explained it in a way that made some damn sense to me. It didn't feel like it was overly complicated. It didn't feel like it was cumbersome. It didn't feel like it was just stacking on one after another, element after element, trying to confuse me even more about what was going on. It made it a very bare bones plot so that people like me that don't know anything about this series could pick up and go. And I think it did a great job with that. So that's the other thing that I really loved about it. And the score by Junkie XL. I love the score. I thought the score was great.
It was great.
Yeah. Okay. Now we can go to what did you love? What didn't you like? What really was lighting a fire under you? And that was a big problem for you. Rob, you can start this.
Yeah. My biggest complaint was too much time was spent in New York on Keystone Earth and not enough time was spent in Midworld. You know, New York doesn't play that big of a hinge in the first two books as it does in the movie. It struck me as feeling disingenuine for me anyway. Mm-hmm. So my second beef is that they didn't explain who the Taheen were properly. They introduced them far too early in the story for my liking. They don't play as big a part in the beginning parts of the story as they do later on in the story. The children that they bring in, those are used later in the book as well. The Taheen aren't explained. For the casual viewer, they're just, they're rat people wearing human skin. Well, that's not a very good explanation.
So what are they? What are they? Who are they?
Well, they're minions of Walter O'Dim, but they don't really explain their other purposes. They're actually in other books as well. They're in Hearts in Atlantis. They're in From a Buick 8. They're in Regulators. They're all over the place. They serve as his general henchmen, but they don't really explain what they are. In the books, they go into a little bit more detail of what the Taheen are, as opposed to their, in the movie, it's literally, you don't know that they're just rat people wearing human skin. It doesn't really jive for me.
All right. Wayne, you said you already had something, so I'm not going to let Troy steal it this time. What is it?
One of the things that just totally bugs me, on the surface, it may seem minor, but it is what really bugs me. And I know it's bugged a lot of other people as well, to greater extent or lesser extent. The fact that we did not get at the very beginning of the movie, why did we not have the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed? Whether it's up on the screen in print or a voiceover saying it at the very beginning, that has to be there. And instead, we kind of got it in the movie. I think it's the seer that's saying it kind of in a dream sequence, and it's just thrown away. And I just feel ripped off that we did not get the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. Can I get an amen?
You sure can. Yeah, that should have been the very first thing that came up on the screen. It should have been a black screen with white lettering, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so that one really bugged me. And this other one that didn't work for me, and it kind of goes against some popular opinion, and Rob and Troy, I'm sorry. I'm all for a few Easter eggs, but I think they wasted way too much valuable time in this 95-minute movie with all of the unnecessary Easter eggs and shout outs to all those other Stephen King things that, granted, Stephen King fans are going to get giddy, but my wife and son and coworkers that saw the movie, they had no idea what any of that stuff was. They're like, why is there an amusement park? Why does it say Pennywise? I know there's an It movie, and I try to explain, and they're like, glazed over. I think way too much time was wasted on that.
Yeah, that ties into what Rob was saying too, right? I mean, that's he thought there was too much time spent on that. Or what?
I don't know. I disagree. I mean, the Pennywise scene might be a little bit long in the tooth because it stayed in the theme park a little bit, but all the other references were literally 1 second blips on a screen. Push the car. Hello there. Turtle comes up. The Rita Hayworth poster. I mean, they were all very quick.
Yeah.
Very, very, very fast. So I don't think any of the Easter eggs took away from the runtime, personally.
But even if they didn't take up too much actual runtime, I think they took up way too much creativity in the time of the writing and how we're going to place it. And they should have been focused on a few more things. That'll give you.
Yeah, I will concede that as well. I mean, it was nice to see all these little nods to different stuff, and I have to admit that I missed the Rita Hayworth reference right off the bat. I had to go back and watch it on a trailer or a synopsis video that I saw on IMDb, and I was like, oh, that is that. I didn't even pay attention during the movie.
Were you sleeping? You're like, I can't do this. I'm done.
That one was fast, and he's right in front of it, so you blink, you miss it.
What was he hiding in the hole behind it? That's really the important question. How did he tape it down when he's in the hole? Let's all contemplate that just for a moment. Wayne, did you have anything else?
No, those were my just two big gripes, were just those two things. And I'm definitely going to echo what Rob said about so much time was spent in New York that I almost felt like they were doing that as a cheap out to try to save money.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, it's possible. It is possible, right? I mean, they were trying to restrict the budget. And it sounds like Midworld was a little more expensive. They should have just went to Westworld. They already have a set built. Ba-dum-bum. Psh. Okay, Troy, what about yours?
I mean, I think they spent enough time on both places personally, just because Midworld isn't any different than our world. It's just older and dustier, and eventually they get to a place that looks like New York City. So yeah, I think they spent enough time in both places, and I think they did the travel fairly well. The two big things I think that they messed up on, though, is that they start up the whole movie with this whole earthquake thing, and then we get Roland explaining what a beamquake is all about, And they never once mentioned what the hell the beams are in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have
True.
these children who are trying to attack the Dark Tower. Well, in the books, they're called the beam breakers because the little spark of light that shoots out at the Dark Tower doesn't actually hit the Dark Tower. It takes out 1/12 of the beams at a time. And in the book, I think like 3 or 4 of the beams are already down. And so they're trying to follow like the one last remaining piece. And it's almost like epic that the tower is going to fall when they get there. So the fact that they're attacking the tower and not the beam, especially when they reference the beam quakes, I thought that was a miss. And then for a second one, there's just some CGI effects towards the end, especially the when Sayer and Roland jump out of the building and land in the bus. I mean, there was just some of that where you can clearly say, yep, it was a $60 million budget, and it kind of took you out of the movie a little bit. For the most part, it was pretty good, but there were some that were kind of like, ooh, that he flew really fast across that room.
Yeah. Yeah, when Roland was thrown up against the wall, that was one
that was
point
a
where I'm
bad
like,
one.
it's like,
That was like, whoa.
That was
$75
Friday
more
CGI.
dollars.
Yeah.
That felt very Attack of the Clones in that moment.
Ooh.
Oh,
wow.
Oh, he threw a punch. Damn. Man, you didn't have to compare. You didn't have to go there, Troy. Easy.
Those two scenes, the throw up against the wall and the jump into the bus and then they stand up and they're fine. Very much Attack of the Clones in those two scenes.
Every time you see it, or you say it, I'm sorry. Every time you say it, I wince. I just go, Attack of the Clones brings back memories. Oh. Dawson's Creek. Dawson's Creek on the bridge. That's basically what happens between the two of them, and I can't do it. We got to move on. So I would, as a novice, I don't really have a lot of complaints. I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a quick pace. It moved smooth. I understood the story. It sounds like they changed quite a bit. Which would make me understand, if I was an avid reader, it would make me understand why some people are upset. Even the whole purpose of the tower, I don't see why you would change that. If, you've got basically, is this 7 books or 8 books? Please correct me.
8.
8, okay.
Some of us don't acknowledge book 4.5.
exactly.
Technically, there's 9 if you want to count the prequel, The Little Sisters of Illyria. Then there's the Wind Through the Keyhole, which is book 4.5. So,
not to mention the comic books. Not to mention the
novels.
poem.
Oh my God!
Charlie
All right,
Charlie
so
the
there's a
Choo-Choo
bunch.
Train.
There's a bunch. So apparently, there's a whole lot of source material. I don't know why you would change much that very drastically. I would keep everything pretty much even keel. But for me, didn't have any of these problems. I just didn't have it. I just thought it was a fun movie, and I thought it was well acted. It was enjoyable. My only concern was the ending. I thought the ending, I really did like how you get, it just rolls into the ending. I like that part. But once everything was kind of wrapping up and finished and you shoot McConaughey in the head, well then it feels like the movie just ends. I mean, I felt like that was a perfect opportunity to maybe toss out a little bit more exposition, maybe have a meaningful conversation between Roland and Jake before you run over to your TARDIS and get out of there. I mean, I just, that's really my biggest problem was the ending. Just too quick.
That you never established anywhere in the movie prior. So at least that they could have at least established that they had another portal at their beck and call. Then when they get to that portal at the end of the movie, it's at least known and fun. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they just like, oh, hey, look, we found another portal.
Yeah.
That part confused me as well. I'm like, is that how's that? That was strange.
All right, well, here's the big question, okay? I know the movie just came out, but let's look at it objectively. This is the movie. Let's say that they're saying that the TV series is coming. I believe it when I hear that it's actually picked up by a network. But I believe that they're going forward with it. They have Troy, it's Glenn, who's the showrunner?
The guy from Walking Dead.
Yeah, Glenn
Yeah, him.
I don't pronounce his name.
We'll go with
there,
that.
I've said it.
He's a good showrunner, and he's got background in this type of material. So I think it's in good hands. The question will be will a network pick it up? And there's really only 2 networks, maybe 3 now, that could really do it justice. Would be obviously Hulu, Netflix, and HBO.
Amazon. They did
could
great things with The Man in the High Castle.
Glenn Mazzara. That's who it was. Glenn Mazzara.
Yeah.
I know it's going on TV. I think that's great. If nothing ever comes of it, should this be remade? Should it be made a different way? Rob?
Yeah. My belief is that they should have stuck closer to what the Ron Howard vision was, is where you stick to the source material, where you actually tell the story of the Gunslinger, not an expansion or the continuation of the story, but start with the actual beginning story and work through that. There's so much material, and this world is so large and so intricately described in the books that they could have material for years. I mean, if they did it as a movie, and then 2 seasons of television, and then another movie like they had planned on doing, with Ron Howard's version of it, you could have years and years of material here, and then you could still go beyond book 7 after that and do the continuation of the story, as opposed to just doing an adaptation straight out. So you could theoretically do both parts of this, but they should, in my opinion, they should have stuck closer to the source material. All right, Troy?
I have a full script written out, so I don't know if you want me to say yes, remake it, or actually go through the script at this point. But yes,
not your script.
I think it could go an extra hour to be that 2.5, and still stick with what they tried to do with this movie, which was introduce it to a new audience. I think there are some critical elements that they missed by not having it be almost 2 hours long, and I have a way that we could do that. But I'll wait to see if Wayne wants to remake it first.
Okay, Wayne, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Although I am glad that we got the movie, and it does bring some new interest into people hopefully reading the books, I'm not going to put The Dark Tower in do not touch status. Okay, I think it should be remade, and even though remaking it, I think instead of calling it The Dark Tower, there wasn't all that much about The Dark Tower. I think it should be called something along the lines of The Gunslinger or The Drawing of the Three. One of the great titles from the books that really snap and pop and draw you in. The Dark Tower, I don't know.
Okay.
You clawing your way out of the darkness? Did you tell the kid whoever walks with you dies by my hand? I will kill him, for both of us. I do not aim at my hand. He who aims with his hand has forgotten the face of his father. I aim with my eye. I do not shoot with my hand. I shoot with my mind. I do not kill with my gun. I kill with my heart.
Now here's where we're going to transition to the remake. Like I said, we're doing this episode a little different, but you guys can talk about your ideas. I mean, how would you do it? Instead of having the one cohesive story that we normally would do in this episode, we're kind of just going to throw out our ideas of how you would like to see it done different as a TV show, as another movie. I mean, however that is, and throw that out there. So, Troy, you said you have a script. So
I do.
If everybody has an idea, throw your ideas out. But Troy has a script, and so I'm really curious. How long are we talking here? Like, is it book report?
I'll try to condense it. I wrote it down so that I would have like a general idea of how to explain it. So I will keep it brief.
Well, when I think of you, I definitely think of condensing. That's your strong suit.
You could edit as you will, but really, what I was expecting to see from my expectation standpoint was something more like Fellowship of the Ring, where you have this like really cool opening with a giant voiceover, how they explain Sauron's ring and all that stuff, and you see Elrond and that kind of stuff. So you would do that same kind of concept with the opening of this movie, right? Where you would have all of the early stages of Roland's life. You would get the KA-tet arriving in Magus, meeting Suzanne Delgado, going to the Cisco oil patch. They fight Farson's men. You see the witch Rhea spying on Roland and Susan making love in the grasses through the pink orb from the Wizard's Rainbow, the battle in the canyon, and all of that stuff. It all leads up through Jericho Hill. They're fighting Farson's men. Roland sees all of his KA-tet die. He grabs the horn, which is key because it's a continuation story, not a retelling, but it's a continuation. So he does grab the horn in this forward over the voiceover. And then he gets back to Gilead, where Walter Martin tricks him into shooting his own father, which then starts us on our thing. He's exiled from Gilead, cut to black. And at that moment, you get the whisper of the words, "The man in the black fled across the desert and a gunslinger followed." That opens up on an epic battle between Roland and Walter fighting, realizing that they can't actually beat each other, sit down, they have a conversation like they have at the end of book 1. And as they're having that conversation, Walter, the man in black, kind of lures Roland into a sleep. And as he falls asleep, you transition to Jake in New York, kind of like they did in the existing movie. And then when we're in New York, we're following Jake. We're kind of understanding that Jake is having these headaches and nightmares and drawing pictures and all that stuff. He goes to the shrink's office. But as he's walking home from the shrink's office, he's about to cross the street where the pusher pushes him in front of the car in the books. But as the car is about to hit Jake, we cut right back to Roland, where Roland wakes up from his dream next to a pile of bones, where we assume that they're Walter's. And then the movie kind of continues on through book 2. We get to meet Eddie. We get to meet Susanna. And then as he goes in and works with the pusher for the third part of it, as he comes in and he grabs Jake, he realizes that as he's grabbing Jake, because he actually comes into the mind of these people, he actually takes over Eddie's body. He takes over Susanna's body. He takes over the pusher's body. And when he takes over the pusher's body and pulls Jake away from the car, something happens where Roland and Jake's minds are almost connected. And that's causing them like great stress and anxiety, which comes from the third book. And that's where Susanna and Eddie help get Roland to like the next portal. But we're doing this really cool transition where we see Roland walking steps forward, Jake walks steps forward. It's almost as if their bodies are in sync with each other. And as Roland is making his way to the portal, Jake is making his way to the portal. So that establishes our connection between the universes. And then when they get to the portal, you get the house monster. And then when Eddie and Susanna are able to open up the portal, it basically disables the house monster and lets Jake come on into the world. So after they're all together, then we get some exposition about why the quakes are happening. That's when they get the kind of the same story that we have in the movie, where Roland is like, we have to get you to a seer to understand what you're seeing, why this is happening in your world. They take him over to the town outside of the city of Lud. And instead of the town having a portal, they actually say, well, we have this tunnel. The portal's on the other side of the city. So then you have to actually travel through the underground city of Lud. And that's where Jake gets captured and ends up going into a room with a Billy Bumbler named Oi. Jake and Oi work together and then realizes that Jake can control Oi with his shine. So then he sends out Oi to find Roland, which then Roland and them come free Jake. Then they run away from the people of Lud and get to the place where the portal is. But that's where they meet the train, the monorail. And they have to take the train in order to go through the portal, because the portal is actually out in the wastelands just outside of the city.
How much further you got on this puppy here, buddy?
Almost done.
You got like 4 minutes. You've just been talking.
Yep. And then and so then the train actually goes, and as the train gets to the other end, then that's where we get some more exposition on the train, and it explains who the Crimson King is and what the towers will do and why the breakers are going to break everything down. And then all of a sudden Jake gets captured by the Taheen, and Jake's taken to the castle of the Crimson King. And instead, Roland and everybody else end up going to the Beam Breakers compound, and they actually befriend the Beam Breakers and would say, okay, if you help us get to the castle, we'll help you escape from your captivity of being Beam Breakers. And so they have a whole plan where they have to go back to Keystone Earth in order to go through the Dixie Pig in order to get into the Breakers compound to save everybody and break them free. That gets them to the castle. And then when they get to the castle and they find Jake, that's when you say, oh my gosh, Walter's actually still alive. There's the epic gun battle we have at the end of the movie, and they free Jake. And then as they walk towards the tower, you can actually see the Dark Tower at the end of the movie. As they walk to the tower amongst the field of roses in the Cancano Ray, they walk up to the tower. They go through the door of the tower, which is actually a portal that takes them back to Keystone Earth. And as they're standing in Keystone Earth, they're now standing in a sea of skyscrapers. And as they turn around, they see a vacant lot with a turtle. But the turtle actually has its back cut out, and it's dug out like a potted plant. And there's a single rose inside of the potted plant. And then we get the voiceover that comes back in again and starts talking about the fact that there are many, many worlds in these, and life is precious, and life will always continue to fight against the dark. And because of that, the tech corporation will fight on for the good of everybody. And then as that happens, the camera zooms in on the turtle, which zooms in on the rose. Music swells, and then it goes rose tower, rose tower, rose tower until it fades to black. Total runtime about 2.5 hours.
I don't see that as a 2.5-hour movie. That's more like about a 3-hour movie.
Maybe it cuts down a little bit depending on how much exposition you have, but it gets all 7 books and still introduces the world to new people so that you wouldn't have to worry about a second movie or third movie because you get the whole thing at once and you're done. And then if you want to do the TV series for the backstory of what you saw in the opening, you have that opportunity.
I would have much rather seen your version of the movie than what I saw in the theaters. I can say that.
I love Troy's version. I'm picturing it being 3 hours and 20 minutes with an intermission.
Ooh, Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, see,
and I'm already working on my voiceover for your movie.
That's the cool part. I will say the cool part about this is you guys really enjoyed what he just said. I'm over here going, it felt like it was already 3.5 hours. I mean, how long was he talking? It was a long time. But
time moves differently in different areas.
It's true.
Right.
But apparently, if you're a big Dark Tower fan, that was cool. All right, so Rob, how would you do it?
I think I'd love to see it as a long form serial picked up by one of the great networks that's good at that. Netflix or Hulu or whomever who wants to pick it up. HBO. I think this series lends itself very well to that type of storytelling. So you could do it on a weekly basis and have an hour or an hour and a half long show, and you could still go for several seasons. I mean, you could spend an entire season for the first 2 books, and then you could do a season for book 3, book 4, book 5, book 6, and fill them in with the backstory stuff here and there interspersed through, and you could do the additional story that's done in book 4.5, even though some people don't acknowledge that it exists. I mean, it would be great in that form, and they could really take some time and explain everything and really show the intricacies of Midworld, and have some of the things that really sat well and struck a tone with me in the books, like the town of Tull and the battle that goes on there, and the crazy cult that worship the Shell station, and coming through the Thinnies, going to the Kansas City where they meet up with Randall Flagg, who is also another persona of Walter / Martin / the Walking Man, whatever you want to call him. He's throughout so many different stories. He plays a part. They could do so much with that, and I think it would be very successful. It would hit with all the core fans, and then it would also do just like Game of Thrones did. It brings in a whole bunch of people who've never read the books but love the epic storytelling.
And you would be faithful to the series, so you would stay one book, one season, and so on and so forth.
Well, maybe not for the first book. The first book is so short that the first and second book could be one season, because the first book is really, I mean, it's a short story. It's only a couple 100 pages long.
Felt like a book for me.
Well, it's because you don't read.
Yeah, I'm like, what are these words? What do these letters put together mean? Why don't they have more spaces?
And it's short because you compare it to the Dark Tower, which is a whopping 800 pages long.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the Harry Potter series. As you move along, each book seems to get just a little bit longer, and a little bit longer, a little bit longer.
Yep.
And
audio books, 1.5 speed.
Troy, I was giving you grief, but well done on putting that whole thing together. That was impressive. Fun.
Because we kept hearing that it was all, you can't do it in one movie. Well, I think you could do it in one movie.
I definitely think you could. They got so much done for me in 95 minutes. I think you could have made the epic that some fans seem to want. That could have definitely fleshed things out a little bit. I mean, $60 million, people are saying it's not a lot of money. It's quite a bit of money. There is a lot that they could have done. There are longer, bigger movies that are done on much less money. So you can do it. It's just a matter of, committing to it. And
especially when you look at that, it was the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's versus Siri trailer that Apple did. It was like $3 million some for the 3-minute spot. So if you're talking about $1 million a minute,
no, that's more $2.5 million for The Rock and $500,000 for everything else. That's what that is.
Right.
That's a good point.
Well, it's probably the same case with this movie, though. I mean, how much did they have to pay McConaughey to be in it, and how much did they have to pay Idris Elba to be in it? I mean, they're probably a large chunk of the budget for this movie.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's probably.
And one thing they could have done with this movie is I had the same problem with Suicide Squad, is that I think Suicide Squad was actually a fun movie. The issue was that Will Smith played Deadshot, and I couldn't see anything other than Will Smith I couldn't see Deadshot. So I think for me, it was I could see Matthew McConaughey. I couldn't see Walter O'Dim. I couldn't see the Man in Black. So maybe having some no names in this movie would have been better.
Well, I think you've got an advantage with Idris. I don't think I think if you're a film buff, you know him pretty well, but I don't think mainstream America is as familiar with him as they are like a Denzel or Chris Pratt or somebody like that. He's not a mainstream movie star. He's a well-recognized actor and a well-respected actor.
But Matthew is.
Matthew, yeah, that's a totally different thing. He's had a long storied career as Matthew McConaughey. And I reserve.
All right.
I just pulled back from it, and then somebody had to do it.
I did it first, about a half hour ago.
About a half hour ago, you did.
Yeah. All right, Wayne. How would you do this if you had it your way?
Well, to be frank, I don't think I could improve much on what Troy and Rob both came up with. I love both their concepts because, like they said, there's so much great, rich material in the books. You really don't want to deviate from it, at least not very much. I think that everything's there that you need. The one thing I would change, no matter what ethnicity we decide to make Roland Deschain, I would love to have Susanna be in the story, but I think we do need to tone back some of the Odetta type of things just for modern audiences. I don't think they would get what Stephen King was going for the way he wrote her in especially book 2 and 3.
How did he write her? Explain for somebody like me.
We should clarify. So when I was talking about that he finds the 3 people, one's called the Pusher. Odetta is actually called the Lady of Shadows. And there's a reason for that because she's actually has split personality. And so Roland's got to figure out which one is she actually working with at the given time.
And one of her personalities is a very angry African-American woman from the late 50s, early 60s.
Yes.
And just some of the things she says and how she says them and does them in the book. Even one of the other characters in the book says, man, she's almost like a caricature. And I don't know if movie audiences of today would understand what Stephen King was trying to present. They would just go, what on earth are they trying to push on us with this character? But otherwise, Rob, Troy, your ideas are fantastic, and I can't do much to improve on those. I just want to go see both of your movies and your TV series and listen to the soundtrack and record the voiceover and just savor in it all the time.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much you want to stick to the books, like how truthful to the books you want to be. If you want to be super truthful, it has to be a long form television series. It's the only way. It's 133 hours of audio. That is a lot of TV.
It is a lot of TV.
Here's what I would say. Okay. And this is somebody that didn't read them. I'll say it one more time for the record. Didn't read them, but I know that they are deep. I know that there's a lot of heft to them. There's a lot of weight to them. They seem like heavy books, literally and figuratively, both ways. That can be done. It can be done on television. I don't think it can be done in theaters anymore. I mean, you've got things like Lord of the Rings that worked, but I also think if you break it down, Lord of the Rings from what I understand, isn't as deep a story as the Gunslinger, as the Dark Tower is. Lord of the Rings is very simplistic in many ways, and it seems like the Dark Tower has a ton of different things happening all the time, a lot of different thematic material. So and
they still cut out a lot of crap from it too. Like Tom Bombadil wasn't in the Lord of the Rings, and he's a big character.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot in Lord of the Rings, but when you break it down, the essence of the story isn't that deep. I gotta take a ring. I gotta get to Mount Doom. Gotta throw that ring into Mount Doom. We're gonna have some stuff along the way, but other than that, that's really what it is. It's a journey. This sounds like there's a lot more factors involved, and I think you would benefit from, as Rob said, by doing it by volume, a season by volume, and I think it's worked great. Look at. I don't want to always go back to Game of Thrones, but it's a prime example of how this kind of material should be done. Why they didn't do it that way to begin with, I really don't understand. Like, I really legitimately don't understand why they wouldn't just start with that.
Because of Hollywood big brass.
But see, it really doesn't make sense.
They don't want
to
to take the risk.
Game of Thrones was a semi-popular book. It was more of an underground book. It's not as popular as Dark Tower. I mean, it's not as well known as Dark Tower. So why wouldn't you take a chance with that versus, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really compute with me. We're going to take a chance and make a movie that isn't really exactly what the fans want. just because we need to get a movie out there. It almost felt like we were going to lose the rights. We got to crank this puppy out, you know? That's really to a degree, what it felt like to me. So
Probably true.
It very well may be. I think they stood a chance of losing the rights, as rights reverting back to Stephen King for him to do what he wants, because it felt almost rushed. Now, I don't think the movie appears rushed. I think it just everything behind the production, everything else, felt like they were hitting a deadline and they had to hit it. I could totally be wrong. That's just my opinion. But in terms of a remake or doing it again, or how they do it going forward, I love Idris. I would love for him to be in the TV show, but I do believe, from what I know and from what I've seen now on the screen, it would benefit the material more to be a TV series. Plus, I think you're getting better work on TV than you are in theaters anymore.
I agree.
So that's what they should do. It feels like we kind of agree with. We all see it.
Well, we all wanted the TV thing. We all thought that the Ron Howard plan was the best plan. Right, introduce big spectacle, spaghetti western, gunslinger type, big battles and all that good stuff, and get people excited about it. And then there are 2 specific books, mainly like book 4, which really has to be a backstory, so it has to be a television series. And then they spend a heck of a lot of time, like book 5, book 6. You could combine those into a whole other television series, because really the action books are book 1 and 2, book 3, and book 7. And then those would be your 3 tentpole movies if you were to do it, which was the Ron Howard plan.
Right.
Let me ask a question. Rob, since you threw out TV first, you can answer first. I'm really curious about you guys. I don't understand who thought this was a smart idea to begin with, to do a movie and a TV series. I don't understand why they think that would be a good idea. Do you think it ever was a good idea?
I think it was a great idea. So they do their big tentpole movies, like Troy just said, with all the big action parts of the story. And then they use the television to do the longer form, the more of the storytelling, the backstories, and fill in some of the other missing details, and give them doing the television series would also give them more latitude for the tie-ins for all the other stories that actually tie into the Dark Tower series. I mean, there are easily a dozen of Stephen King's other stories that are related to the Dark Tower series. So they would have these jumping off points where they could do other stories and still have it all revolve around the same thing. I think that was a great idea to begin with. I still think it's a great idea now.
And I think the challenge was that when Ron Howard came up with the plan, this was all pre Game of Thrones, pre Walking Dead, pre Westworld, pre MCU. I mean, this literally could have been DTU. Right, for lack of a better term. And back then, you're thinking big budget has to be on the big screen versus small budget is on television. So now that they do have precedent with Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, etc., I think now you could do the long-form television series. And in order to do that, you do have to start at the beginning in order to understand why I care about these characters and their purpose in the first place, which is a TV series we're going to get, assuming a network picks it up. And then from there, we can see what they do, if they go back to big screen or if they stay with the TV series moving forward.
Right. And at that point, I don't think it would matter either way. I'd be all for if it works with that television series, Troy. I'm all for it just continuing on television and just making it the best that it can possibly be. Because that's a good point. I forgot that when Ron Howard first came up with the idea, we were basically living in another world. And now it all makes more sense. Like he really foresaw the future, and I'm on board. I think it worked great at this point.
Well, and here's another thought that I have. I mean, you could do the long form serial, go through all the source material, get to the end book, and then you could do a movie like Troy suggested as the continuation, because the whole point of the stories is that Ka is a wheel, and Roland has to keep reliving this entire scenario until he gets everything right that he's supposed to get right. So you could do the original source material and then go into an adaptation movie like they tried to do for this movie, or better yet, like the one that Troy suggested.
Oh, boom. Right there. We got a remake. We're going to do our TV series, and then we're going to lead into the big screen adaptation that Troy came up with.
Yeah.
Love it.
And to go along with this killer TV series that's going to run for years, we're going to need an awesome podcast to go along with it. Just saying.
The Dark Tower podcast.
There you go.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I think that'll be a hit. That'll definitely be a hit. Okay, let's go ahead and play the remake game on this respect. who should direct or who should be in charge of this series / movie? Who has that name? I know who Wayne's going to say.
Well, let him say it.
Go ahead, Wayne. It's either going to be J.J. Abrams or M. Night Shyamalan.
Why don't you say it for me? Why don't you say it for me, Aaron?
It's either J.J. Abrams or M. Night Shyamalan. It's one of those two. Maybe you'll throw a Lindelof in there just to throw things off a little bit. You'll throw it Lindelof. Huh?
I actually cannot see M. Night Shyamalan dealing with this type of material. I would love, now that we've worked the kinks out for them, I would love to see what Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof could do with this puppy. Love it.
I got there.
I mean, look at how awesome The Leftovers and Lost both were.
Okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree on Lost.
It's on a different level of the tower, Rob. It's on a different level.
Yeah, it's on a much lower level.
Ooh, bam. Let's fight. Lost fighting. Lost fighting.
Fighting words.
Let's fight. All right, Rob, what about you? Do you have anybody in mind?
I really don't. I didn't put that much thought into who I wanted to do it. I was actually on board, like I said, with Ron Howard doing it because, I mean, he's got a track record for making great movies.
Okay. What about you, Troy?
Yeah, I'm fine with everybody that's involved with it right now. Nick, that directed the movie that's out in theaters right now, he's an avid fan. He read the books when he was 13. I mean, he's got the vision for it. He just needs the resources, the time, and the determination to do it the right way and not have the studio breathing down his neck. So if you can get financing from like Ron Howard, J.J. Abrams, et cetera, and all of these small studios pitching in little bits along the way, I think all of the people that were involved since it first started to be talked about back in, what was it, 06, 07, those are the same people you want to be working on this epic. And they already have a great showrunner that's already tapped. So let's just go ahead and just get everybody in a room and go, what parts did you have? What parts did you have? How do we squish that back together? And if not, we'll just send them our script and then we'll become the tech corporation on the front of the title card.
There we go.
A couple more final questions. One, Roland Deschain. Do you stick with Idris or do you go with somebody else? This is our thing. We can do whatever we want. What would you do?
All right, I'll go first. I'll tackle the hard topic. So I had this long discussion with somebody online about how this actually works. Because in the end, so it depends. If the TV series is the straight adaptation of the books, then it can't be Idris. It has to be a Caucasian Clint Eastwood type of character. Because that's, again, straight adaptation of the books. In the movie, you could go with an Idris Elba, right? A black actor, because in that regard, what happens is that when he gets to where he has to relive this cycle again, it's really small in the Gunslinger in that first couple pages where he's walking in the desert and he starts to feel dizzy. And the one thing that I always thought when I read that was, oh, that's the moment where the consciousness like merges back into itself in that concept. And what we see is what we see through his eyes, but his eyes might be what the consciousness thinks he's seeing versus actually what his outward appearance actually is. So he thinks he's seeing blue eyes, pale skin, etc., what have you. So in the movie, it could definitely be a black actor because consciousness may still see himself as a Caucasian.
This is
the residual, yeah.
This is the full Heinrichs. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing full Heinrichs right now.
That's because you didn't read it yet.
No, he hasn't gotten to the robot yet.
I totally agree, though. For the long form television series, you stick with the source material. It's a white guy, who's haggard and well worn. And at the end, when you transition over to the adaptation or the continuation of the story, it doesn't matter what race he is, because at that point, he's been basically reincarnated and has to restart all over again.
Okay. Well, you guys know the source material. So if you're cool with that, we can keep Idris at the end. But who would be your Roland for the TV show?
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Definitely.
Wow. That didn't take long.
I'm not familiar with him, but I'll defer to you guys because...
He plays Negan on Walking Dead. He was the comedian in Watchmen. He was the dad on Supernatural.
He was Danny on Grey's Anatomy. I went there.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Danny Duquette.
That's what you pulled out. He's also Bruce Wayne's dad. I'm just saying. That's an important tidbit, right?
I mean, after Breaking Bad, I could almost see Bryan Cranston playing this too.
It seemed like you guys really instantly went to Jeffrey D. Morgan. I would go with that. Bryan Cranston seems the gunslinger. I don't know. It'd be more like the meth maker. Can we change it a little bit and just like throw an homage?
But it's that more weathered, haggardy kind of look, which I kind of think of when I think of that character. Potentially, but I'm good with Jeffrey D. Morgan too.
Agreed. All right, so what about the Man in Black? Now that's a tricky one because that seems to be the one that people are really split on. They either like McConaughey or they thought he went too far over, but I haven't heard too many people say he was fantastic. Like they're not touting him up nearly as much as Idris. So what do you guys think?
It has to be a no-name actor, somebody you've never heard of before, because the Man in Black isn't important. I mean, the Man in Black is important. Walter specifically, not important. Martin, not important.
Explain that to people that don't understand. Explain that.
Because the Man in Black is eternal. So therefore he could take any shape, any form at any time, which is why and that's why he's Martin in the prequels. He's Walter in the Gunslinger. He's Randall Flagg in book 4. And I can't remember if he shows back up right before the Crimson King in book 7, but irregardless, he can be anybody. So really a no-name actor that just has really good acting skills can play this character. But it can't be someone recognizable because then it takes away from the essence of what the Man in Black is.
You need more of a Shemp, the everyman that kind of blends into the crowd, because you're right. Who he actually is doesn't matter. It's what he is that matters.
Gotcha.
Well said.
All right. So last, this is something I kind of want to know. Can somebody explain the Crimson King for us novices?
The Crimson King is literally devil incarnate in a physical form, and he's living in that what's called the Todash space, the realm that's just outside of what the tower is protecting. So if the tower were to fall, literally the devil would appear on Earth.
Okay. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to understand that concept a little better. Okay, good deal. What about nostalgic moments? So you've got this series, you got this movie. What are little nods that have to be throughout the series or in the movie at the end, the conclusion?
When you say nostalgia scenes from the Dark Tower movie that we just watched a couple of weeks ago?
Let's say no more than 2 for each of you. Specific things from the books. Otherwise, Troy will have 8. Specific things.
I'll have 70
from the books that you definitely want to see, but aren't paramount to the plot.
Okay, I'll go. I'd like to see Sharik. He's one of the other guardians of the beam. He's a giant bear with a satellite dish on his head.
Okay.
There's a reason for it. There's a reason for it.
Yeah, there is a reason for it. That's one of the things I really like to see. And the other thing that you really have to have is the lobstrosities. Aaron's not going to understand what the lobstrosities are, but they're one of the other things that they set up a part of the story that just absolutely resonated with me. I thought it was fantastic storytelling.
What about you, Wayne? You had 70. Can you trim it to 2?
I absolutely can. So nostalgia moments that I would love to see in the movie, which may or may not need to be part of the plot, but I would love it if they could be, is to have Blaine the monorail. And I can't say too much more without getting spoilery, but I just think, like Troy told me to watch Disney's Tomorrowland, because that movie really gives a representation on how they could do Blaine the Mono.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely.
And I agree. And I would love to see that in our adaptation. And since, budgets are no concern for what we're trying to create here, I would love them to somehow buy the rights so that we could get the little kind of like a Wizard of Oz segment that's in one of the books near the middle of the series.
Okay. Troy, what about you? Did you whittle it down to 2?
I did. I'm very much also on the Blaine the train monorail concept. So I'm with Wayne there. The other one I think that I'd really love to see is the whole mind transference. There's basically a sequence where they basically transition the essence of humans into, I believe, machinery, if memory serves. And so think of Westworld in a way. They're kind of stealing human identity and placing them into robots.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that sounds like we've got a TV series.
Yes, I got robots in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course you did.
So did Stephen King.
Yeah.
Andy?
Oh, boy. All right. Well, this is where we're going to have our final pitch. This is going to be really sleek and simple because I don't think even Wayne wants to try to do all the stuff that Troy just said, nor does he want to, recap everything. So it's going to be real simple, but it's going to be a little trailer from Wayne Henderson, courtesy of MediaVoiceovers.com.
The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. One man on a pursuit to protect us all from the forces of darkness led by the ominous Crimson King. Prepare yourself for a sprawling television event culminating in the blockbuster film fans have been dying to see. He aims with his eye. He shoots with his mind. He kills with his heart. His name is Roland Deschain, and he has not forgotten the face of his father. This is Stephen King's The Dark Tower.
Okay, great job as always, sir. Great job.
Aw, thank you.
Before
Thank
He
you
did
so
it
much.
live. That was awesome.
Totally.
Taking copious notes.
He just read Troy's script. That's really all it was. He just condensed the 6-minute version down to about 30 seconds. It was amazing, really.
It made it sound sexy.
Very. So before
yeah.
before we close the show out, there are two. I did put the thing on mention on Facebook, but we did this really last minute, so we didn't get many comments. But we have two on how they would want to change a future Dark Tower. Jessica Farrell says more nudity and adult themes. In The Gunslinger, he rips a baby out of a lady's womb and bangs a rando broad and an oracle. Why do we get the kid-friendly version of the Dark Tower?
And the oracle she's referring to is not like an oracle like from the Matrix.
No.
It's actually a spirit.
Oh, hey. All right. Roland is a fun guy. I like Roland.
Ghost banging.
So just imagine that little thing swirling around the theme park chasing Jake. That's what Oracle had. That's what Roland had sex with.
Play again and play. All right. Sherry Odom says, I love you guys. My 2 cents. I would put an after credit scene showing Eddie in an airplane, Odetta at Macy's, and Jake walking to school. The only voice you hear is the Men in Black giving a portion of his monologue from the end of the book Aaron Peterson hasn't read.
Oh, no, she didn't.
Aha. That's funny. Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. I do want to mention once again, Wayne Henderson, MediaVoiceovers.com. Wayne, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
You can find me there or on the Packers Fan Podcast. You know, that's the show that's dedicated to your 13-time NFL champion, Green Bay Packers. And Troy and I just kicked off, so to speak, season 7 of the Packers Fan Podcast because football season is coming.
All right. Troy Heinrich, where can people find you?
You can find me talking about The Blacklist when it returns this fall. I believe last week of September on Wednesday night on NBC. I do that with Aaron Peterson. And of course, you can hear us talk about the Packers, as Wayne said, on the Packers Fan Podcast. But if you want to hear everything that I do, just go to about.me/Troy Heinrichs, and that'll take you to all the goods in one place.
How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I'm nowhere near as cool as these guys. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Urban Squatch, or if you feel like being bored, you can go to my website and go to rowald.net for technological twitterings and other crap you probably don't care about.
You know how to sell it, boy. Let me tell you. Oof. All right, well, you can find me at TheHollywoodOutsider.com. I'm on the Hollywood Outsider podcast every single week, and on Remake This Movie Right, and Blacklist, he already talked about it, and Beyond Westworld. If you're looking for another Man in Black, Troy and I do a show for Westworld. So there you go. All right. Now, let's go ahead and head this thing out. Remember, you can go to remakeThisMovieRight@gmail.com if you want to email us your thoughts on this episode, this little bonus episode. Please don't judge the show on this episode. It was really thrown together kind of late. We're also on Twitter at RemakeRight, and we're on the website is RemakeThisMovieRight.com. I want to say one more time, thank you guys for being here. I know this is a little more complicated, but there's one more person than usual. There's 4 people versus 3 people on a normal episode. So thank you guys for hanging in there and everybody pitching in.
And go
Absolutely.
see The Dark Tower. Go
Yes.
see it. Judge
And
it
read
for yourself.
And read the books, Aaron.
Oh, me?
And everybody else. And
And
thanks for
everybody
having
else.
us on.
Yes.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. The credits have rolled on this remake, but please be sure to come back for the next one. And remember that every film you love will get a reboot someday, and only you can remake that movie right.
Or all right.
Oh, you missed the opportunity.
Oh.
Oh, that was good.